Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Casey Kress. She is a senior financial advisor with Connecticut Wealth Management. We'll meet her when we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Casey Kress. She is a senior financial advisor for Connecticut Wealth Management. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to be here.
One thing I want to mention right off the bat, don't be misled by the name Connecticut Wealth Management, because you serve pretty much all of New England, correct?
We do, that's correct, and even have clients all throughout the country.
Great. So for people who may not know, what is wealth management? What is it that you do?
That's a great question because it's such a broad term and overused term, in fact. And what we do at Connecticut Wealth Management is really focus on an individual's financial picture in its totality. So we're not just looking at their investments, we're really looking at what their goals are, what their dreams are for retirement, and helping them get to that goal.
And another misnomer in the name of wealth management, when people hear the word wealth, they think, oh, well, that's got to be just for rich people, right? It's really for any income bracket at all.
It absolutely is. People often think, well, I don't have enough to sit down with a professional. And that's not the case. Everybody needs guidance, everybody needs advice, and there's no such thing as having too little.
So you basically answer the question, but I'll ask it and have you kind of answer in an even more sort of a general blue-collar way. If someone is watching this show, why do they need wealth management help? Why would they need an advisor like you, or why should they utilize your services?
So at Connecticut Wealth Management, what we're able to do for somebody is not just have somebody earning an income and waking up every day to go to work for no reason. We're putting framework and context around that income for them and helping them, again, sort of map out what is their life going to look like, not just in retirement, but along the way as well. And oftentimes people are so busy and wrapped up in their day-to-day lives that they never take the time to actually sit down, write out those goals, which can really help, and then create strategies on ways to achieve those goals.
Now, obviously, I would imagine that the earlier someone comes in and utilizes your services, the better for them in the long term, correct?
Absolutely. So again, people often wait until they're nearing retirement, or sometimes even after retirement, until they sit down with a professional. And it's not at that point too late, but it would have been more beneficial for them to have sat down earlier on in their career so that they were able to, again, sort of map out that picture and not just wake up one day and think, oh, how am I going to do this?
Now, by mapping it out, do you mean it's not just as a simple matter as knowing that you should save money, because that's just a simple way. I mean, that's just common sense. Try to save money for your future, but you're very specific in ways that you can kind of direct money to this thing, plan for that, know what your income range will be in the future, just all kinds of things like that.
Exactly right. So what we're doing is we're looking at income both now as well as off into the future. And we're also planning for all different goals. So shorter term goals are going to have different investments than, say some of the longer term things such as retirement. So again, that's why the earlier that somebody is able to come in and begin working with a financial planner, that really is going to help them sleep better at night.
Now, you're a certified financial planner. Since there is a CFP next to your name, just basically what does that mean?
That's a great question. So a certified financial planner is really what we consider the gold standard, in our industry, because almost 80% of people who hold themselves out to be either a financial advisor or a financial planner are not a CFP. A CFP means that you've committed yourself to a rigorous set of examinations, so you have the technical knowledge that one would need in order to help guide somebody through the financial planning process, and also hold themselves to a high code of standard of ethics, which in this day and age we know is more important than ever.
You'd be the person to go to if someone like won the lottery, and right? Because that should be like one of the first things that they do if you come into a lot of money, inherited, or however, a financial planner type person is someone you should go to immediately. Should be one of the first things you do, right?
Exactly. A lot of times when people do come into either big inheritances or the lottery, that's really the first time they've ever dealt with having a large sum of money, and oftentimes that can lead them astray. Their goals and dreams that they had aspired to, they really end up wasting a lot of that money. Whereas if they sat down with somebody, they could still have, that dream house or boat, whatever it is that they wanted, but be more smart about the way that they end up spending those dollars.
There are so many shows where you see, lottery winners or something, and a little ways down the road, it's not a happy ending because bad things happen. A lot of times the money is lost or just, thrown away in some way, and unfortunately.
And a lot of times they're often preyed on by advisors, as I mentioned before, that aren't necessarily aligning their goals with that of their clients. So they're oftentimes making recommendations based on what they're going to be compensated for, instead of really making sure that their recommendation is in the best interest of that person.
How are you different from like a broker or like an accountant even?
So there are so many different titles that one can use in the financial services industry, and it's so hard, and that's a lot of the reason why people don't end up picking up the phone to make that call and sit down with somebody, because they're unsure of the advice that they're going to be given. So what really separates Connecticut Wealth Management is that we're an independent firm, which means that we have no proprietary products, so we're not trying to sell something to people based on meeting quotas, based on taking in new clients. We're really trying to, again, learn more about our clients through their families, through what their dreams and aspirations are in life, and coordinating their affairs with their investments, as opposed to looking at their investments inside of a vacuum, not taking into consideration all the other factors of their life.
So should people, even if they do want to utilize a financial advisor like yourself, should they still use an accountant for things like specifically taxes and that sort, and then still come to you and knowing, basically you'll know what their W-2 situation is like, right?
Absolutely. We really try to be the quarterback of that financial planning process. A person is still going to want to have an accountant to help them plan for tax planning strategies. They're still going to want to have an attorney to be able to help draft their estate planning documents. They're still going to need an insurance agent perhaps to help them with the risk management side of things. But under our umbrella, what we're trying to do is assist them in all of those varying aspects. So we're not the experts in each of those areas, but we are going to help seek out the experts that they need.
So I asked you at the beginning of the show, really, someone from any sort of income bracket can utilize your services, but one of the first things that someone may ask themselves, especially if they're in a lower income bracket, sure, I would love to have a financial advisor, but I don't want to pay you some ridiculous amount of money to just organize me. Are you expensive, or are you very reasonably priced, or someone like you?
Well, our firm actually does deal with the higher net worth individual, business owners, doctors, executives, and
Bill Gates.
maybe someday.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that the firm that you're using is the right fit for you at that point in your life. That might mean at some point in time you make a change as you begin to accumulate some wealth and your situation becomes more complex. We always say we can't be all things to all people, and we'll absolutely tell somebody when they are able to seek out, advice from somebody who is just as qualified but doesn't need the level of complex planning that we're able to offer.
Does your job change a bit during, for a lack of a better term, tough economic times? Like if we're in a recession, which we are, I don't know if you would describe us as coming out of the recession at this point. Is your job very different? Does it make your job more difficult? And because your clients' lives are probably more difficult during a recession.
They absolutely are, and that's exactly why we really try to make sure there's a plan in place. Oftentimes people are very emotional when it comes to money and investing, and people unfortunately tend to make the wrong decision at the wrong time. So if you have the framework of your financial plan in place, it really helps you stay the course, stay on track in times of uncertainty. When the market is very volatile, you don't have to be as concerned as some people who don't have their plan in place because they're so focused on their investments.
So if somebody comes in, I just kind of want to get into the nuts and bolts of it a little bit now. When somebody comes in and you talk about planning for your future, that can really go in so many different directions too. A young couple, they're going to probably have a family, so you'll want to set aside money for a potential college, and even way further down the road than that, their own retirement. So more specifically, what you ask them what they want to do and what they're looking for, and then you kind of take it from there?
We do. So everybody's different. It doesn't matter if we have two 35-year-olds meetings back to back. They have completely different goals, completely different aspirations. And that's why we really work through a series of listening and just listening to what they want to do. As you mentioned, saving for college is really important, but some people really want that beach house someday. And it's just a matter of letting the client do a lot of talking and us doing a lot of listening at first, and really, again, just figuring out what the family together, what they hope to do.
In the end, is it really just about doing the math? This person wants a beach house, and at this point in time, they're making this much income, with the potential to have that go up a little bit, but it's just, is it a matter of, putting X amount of dollars away?
In combination with lots of other things. So we also, help people plan for back to taxes. Not only do you want to work with an accountant, but we can, position certain investments in more tax-efficient vehicles that can help. We also, want to make sure, of course, that they are saving a sufficient amount, which is important for any goal that you have to reach. But no one thing can really be looked at inside of itself. It's really that entire picture. It's not just a matter of crunching numbers. It's really, some of the softer things are just as important.
As we tape the show, it is tax season. So is your job any different at this point in time as people, or maybe sort of have the foreknowledge that they know that they'll be getting a return or will have to pay taxes? And like we talked about already, that's really a job for an accountant, but they know, they have a little bit better idea of what their financial situation is right now when they come to you.
Exactly. And as we all know, there's been a lot of tax reform in the last month or so, which has caused many changes for people as far as contributing more dollars to tax-deferred vehicles such as a 401k to try and eliminate some of that taxable income that they'll have. So again, there's not one strategy that'll work for everybody, but at this point in the year, it's a great time to start looking at ways in which everybody wants to save taxes. That's just, we don't want to give our money to the government. So now is a great time to actually, start to look at where some of those dollars are going. And I always am amazed by the fact that people like to complain about paying taxes a lot, but don't ever really take the time to sit down and plan for ways in which to, save in some of those other tax deferred vehicles.
Technically, if you're paying income tax, like at the end of the year, if you get a refund, basically that just means that the government has held on to your money interest-free. If you held on to your money for that whole year, at the very least, it was probably, at least in a savings account drawing some kind of interest. So granted, nobody wants to write a check to pay their taxes, but in the end, you actually have more money in your pocket because at least that money earns some kind of interest as opposed to getting a refund, right?
That's absolutely correct, and that's something that you'd want to talk with your tax professional about, making sure that you have the proper amount of withholding without over withholding, and making sure that the government doesn't have your money for longer than they need to.
Right. So you had said before that everybody sort of has a different agenda and different goals when they come in. Two 35-year-olds may have very differing ideas of what they want their future to be like, but depending on the demographic of the person coming in, their age group, do you recommend, like if someone who's in their 20s that comes into your office, you would sort of have a different itinerary for them, so to speak, than someone maybe a little older in life, correct?
We would, because when you're first starting off, you haven't built up that wealth yet. So that's really, you need to lay a foundation. At that point in time, you're probably still paying off student loans. You've probably got credit card debt, unfortunately. So at the beginning stages of financial planning, it's the gentle balance between paying off that debt and beginning to accumulate some savings. And what we always say for younger people, where the most important thing to start is having an emergency savings account. A lot of times people are so focused on contributing to their 401k, which is very important and a great way to start saving for retirement. But if your car breaks down next week and you have to put it on the credit card, you haven't really gotten yourself anywhere. So a younger person, we would absolutely, again, recommend that they sit down with somebody, but their strategies for planning are going to be a little bit different than that of somebody who's already accumulated some wealth.
Isn't it funny how the younger person who doesn't have the wealth spends a lot more than the person who's older and wiser and who may have money in the bank but is also frugal enough not to necessarily just spend thrift freely,
Exactly.
too freely. So that's one end of the spectrum, talking about younger people. How about maybe around this time of year, seniors and possible retirement, and they're looking at their financial situation too. So especially this time of year, as I have you on the show. So talk about that a little bit.
So absolutely, as you near retirement and then into retirement, the planning becomes even more important, because up until retirement, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to live the lifestyle you plan to in retirement. It's really hard for somebody to retire and then go back to work, nor do they want to have to do that. So up until somebody retires, we're constantly updating their plan, making sure that they're on track, again, to be able to retire with the lifestyle they had anticipated. And then on the flip side, once you're retired and then living off of what are now is a fixed income, you need to make sure that your investments are working for you, and that, again, you're never really straying off that plan, whether it be a bad year in the market or some family emergency that's come up. Always coming back to the plan and tweaking it and making sure that everything is still on track.
And sometimes I would imagine it could be culture shock for someone who retires, and it's really just the Social Security check and whatever savings they have, and suddenly that disposable income just isn't there anymore.
Exactly, and we say in this day and age, you can no longer rely on the government to support you in retirement. That's unfortunately the way it is.
And we don't know what Social Security like.
We have younger people have no idea what Social Security will look like for them, so their retirement is totally relying on them to save now.
Now, you had mentioned before, you mentioned 401ks, and a lot of people utilize them through their work. Do you have advice for them? Like you said, you don't necessarily, nor should you rely on that solely, especially because the market is volatile. Your 401k is going to be affected by that too, right?
It is, and so that's what it's really important to, again, understand what you're investing in. What happened in 2008 when there was a large market decline, a lot of people had really taken on too much risk than they were willing to pallet. And so, again, working with a professional is going to help you both stay the course in times of uncertainty, whether that be making changes to your portfolio, making changes to your investment, but also understanding your risk tolerance and what level of risk you're comfortable taking and what level of risk will not impact your portfolio greatly.
Would you agree that a younger person it might be more acceptable for them to take more risk as opposed to an older person? Is that generally how it goes?
That's a general rule of thumb, because their time horizon is much greater. But again, it depends on what those dollars are going to be used for. So again, inside the 401k, absolutely, they can afford to be more aggressive, because if the market goes down, they have many years to recoup those losses. Whereas an older person nearing retirement doesn't have as long of a time horizon. Whereas if that younger person is saving for a down payment on their house, they probably wouldn't want to be aggressive with those dollars, because that's money that they're going to want to use more quickly.
No, because it's a fact of life that over the course of time you accumulate wealth. So just by virtue of that, do you have more older people coming in as opposed to younger people just because of that fact?
We do. Yeah. Generally, our client base ranges from 45 to 85, and really, again, 85, I think
wow.
we do. We actually have clients in their 90s.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
Here, manage my money.
So it's an ongoing process. It never stops. And again, I think it's the natural way to sort of wait until you have accumulated some wealth to sit down with a professional. But again, more and more, we're telling people that the time is really now. The sooner you can sit down with somebody, the better off that you'll be.
Do you kind of have, I know everybody is different, but do you kind of ask everybody who comes in sort of the same thing to start out with? If they come in and they really don't know do you just say, well, what do you want? What are your goals? And then at that point, what are your goals, in conjunction with what you have now, what you're making, and then you sort of take it from there?
Exactly. So we start off with a lot of open-ended questions. Again, we need to listen. Our job is not to direct people in one way or the other. We really want to know what they what they want to do.
Casey, what if I want a mansion? What do I do? What do I have
It
to
is
do?
our job to tell people that you might need to
I want
scale.
a large mansion.
We have to play the bad guy sometimes and tell people that's probably not realistic, but if you truly want, this is what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they bring it back to reality and understand, that they have to live within their means. So we ask a lot of questions. One, for instance, what does retirement look like for you? And all the varying answers, especially when you're meeting with both spouses. Oftentimes they have wildly different
And these
dreams.
people are supposed to know each other.
Exactly. So it's really a discovery process, and one that, again, there's no right answer. It's just an ongoing process.
Do you find that in this day and age, maybe because of the way the economy is, that people either do not plan to retire as early as they might have thought, or financially can't, and so people are just flat out working longer, right?
That is the case. So again, people's incomes have not seen the rise, of inflation as they had in the past. So people aren't earning as much as they maybe had expected that they would be, as well as the fact that they're still recovering from a lot of the sort of economic downturns, and whether or not the economy is doing well or they have enough, people never feel like they have enough. So you do see that people are continuing to work longer and not retiring as early as they used to.
You hear a big term that's used now because of unemployment is underemployed. People who aren't working full time. Can you help somebody like that too?
Of course. Again, everybody's different, and there are going to be different situations where people, again, aren't making significant income, so they feel as though saving is just totally impossible. Whether you have a small pie or a big pie can really only be sliced so many ways. So it's really a matter of, again, just coming up with what is most important for that person at that point in their life. And it doesn't ever stop, though. You have to continually look at that.
So even though you personally handle higher end clients, can a person who basically lives paycheck to paycheck be helped get help from a financial advisor? Can they help someone of that income level? Someone who's kind of, again, paycheck to paycheck?
They can, because oftentimes people have never put together a budget because they look at it as a daunting task that is going to suck all the fun out of their life. And I would argue that a budget should be used as a tool as opposed to a task that's, this thorn in your side of daily life. And I can't spend my money on that because it's not in the budget. It's really a tool to help you reach those goals. So if you have a budget in place and you're sticking to the budget, you have built into that budget something fun, whether it be going out to the movies or going out to dinner. You have to build all of those things into a budget so that you're not just saving, you have to live your life is what it comes down to.
At the same time, though, you shouldn't just go out to dinner or the movies without knowing that you're going to be able to pay your bills,
and that's what the great point is that most people don't take the time to see where their money is going. Income is a really easy thing for people to talk about. They know what they make. Spending, that's the wild card.
Yeah.
Even with our clients, we work with people who've done well for themselves. They don't know where their money goes.
Do they find that there are expenses that exist, but they just never really thought it's not a secret expense, but they just never looked at it as an expense before? But in actuality, it's draining funds.
Right, and people often say, "Well, that was one time."
Yeah.
But there's always that one time.
It turns into more than one time.
So it's important, again, to not just have the budget, but refer back to it, update it, tweak it, and make sure that you're sticking to it. Otherwise, it's really just a formality.
So in a more generic way, for someone who hears the term financial advisor, what misconceptions can you kind of alleviate from their mind about what you do and how you might or might not be able to help them?
Again, I think it's really important for the person to understand who they're working with. Again, a lot of people use the titles financial advisor and financial planner, and they really don't know how they're compensating that person or how that person, is getting paid. And it's all about transparency. Don't be afraid to ask those types of questions.
Connecticut Wealth Management, the name may suggest Connecticut, but you're licensed in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, really all of New England for the most part. And that's who you serve, clients all over the place, right?
We do.
Is there a website people can go and learn more?
They can. It is www.ctwealthmgmt.com.
And what's on the website for people to go and see?
So the website's going to just, give you bios of all of the advisors at Connecticut Wealth Management. We are all CFPs, so we hold ourselves to that high standard. You're also going to just learn a little bit more about our typical client, if you will, and other ways in which to get in contact with us.
Sounds good. Check out the website. Casey Kress is a senior financial advisor for Connecticut Wealth Management. Pleasure having you on the show today.
Thanks again, Sean.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We will see you next time. Take care.